released court documents offering a clearer timeline around those brutal stabbings of 4 University of Idaho students.
A court filing submitted by the defense reveals the phone activity of 2 surviving roommates before they called 911. One roommate, identified as BF, began reaching out to family members beginning at 7:30 that morning and also took some photos. It wasn't until 11:56, more than 4 hours later, that police were finally called. The other roommate appears to have spent hours on Instagram. We're joined now by defense attorney Misty Marris to break down these new details. Misty, thanks so much for being with us. Why is that timeline significant, and what does it indicate to you?
So the timeline is incredibly important. It's important for both the prosecution and the defense. What's happening right now in these new filings, we're learning so much now that some of the gag order and a lot of documents that were under seal are now in public sphere. So part of what this submission is about is the defense says that the prosecution was actually cherry picking messages and focused on that time frame between 4 a.m. and 4:30, where the 2 surviving roommates are exchanging what we've all read and seen to be pretty intense text messages speaking about how they were scared. But previously, the narrative had been that they fell asleep after that, woke up, and then called 911. Now there's an accounting of activity during that time period leading up to that 11:56 a.m. 911 call. So essentially, the defense is trying to diminish some of the credibility of potential witness testimony of those roommates, and also trying to question the timeline of when these murders could have taken place. So it's a defense strategy at this point.
Yeah, we're not going to know until they testify, which is going to be crucial. We'll remember that when the initial 911 call was placed, it wasn't for them. They didn't say, hey, my roommate is dead. You know, it's almost like there may have been some denial in this. So we'll have to hear them explain some of that. But I do wonder, Misty, because you hear DM, one of these surviving roommates, she said that she saw these bushy eyebrows on the person in the house. And we know that Bryan Kohberger took a selfie not long after the murder, just hours after. How crucial is this photograph?
This is really important, Brianna, and you hit the nail on the head, and both issues go together. So we know Dylan Mortensen's surviving roommate, she is the only known person that actually saw the masked intruder that night. And she said that his mouth and his forehead was covered, but she did observe bushy eyebrows. The defense is taking great pains to keep that testimony out of the courtroom. They say that her account is not credible. She's changed her statements in the investigation. She admitted to utilizing alcohol the night before. They're trying to keep it out. Now, prosecutors are arguing this particular photograph, it's for the jury to decide, what does bushy eyebrows mean? And so this photograph has evidentiary value. The jury will make a determination about an objective standard. If you think about it, who has bushy eyebrows? Well, that could be different to different people. What that means, it's not a word that has a specific definition, but that the jury should be the one to make the determination about whether or not that photograph of Kohberger is consistent with Dylan Mortensen's account of that night. So this is an incredibly important piece of evidence, and we're just learning about some of this right now, even though this case has been going on for 2 years.
And Misty, what do you make of prosecutors pointing to this evidence that Kohberger bought a knife and a sheath on Amazon months before the killings? Is that potentially a smoking gun?
Well, certainly that knife sheath is a large part of the prosecution's case. As we know, knife sheath left behind at the house, and Kohberger's DNA found, a statistical match is found on that knife sheath. That's going to be how the prosecutors put this case together. Of course, we know the defense. They're not going to contest that the DNA was Kohberger's. They're going to say it could have gotten in the house some other way. Just because the DNA is on it, it doesn't mean that Kohberger was ever in that house. So that's the defense argument. What prosecutors are going to do, loop back into those Amazon records. It's part of a warrant for a lot of electronic records that included his consumer click records on Amazon. And they're going to say, don't you think it's a bit coincidental that he purchases a knife sheath 8 months before, and then there's a knife sheath found in the house. And they're going to do that because, of course, they have the burden of proof, but also to combat what we know the defense argument will be, that, yeah, even if there was DNA on it, it doesn't necessarily mean he was in the house. It could have been transferred. It could have gotten there another way. So absolutely, Boris, that's putting together those pieces, not relying solely on the DNA, but all the evidence in total to put Kohberger in that house on that night.
It's really shaping up to be quite the case as we see some of these bits and pieces that will be introduced in court. Misty Marris, thank you so much. Always great to have you.